Director Fuentes?
Here.
We have a quorum of 6 present with 1 absent. If the record would also show that Directors Colson, Lewis, Melvin, Troyani, and Chairman Dillard are also present at this time.
Thank you. Next is approval of the minutes from the meeting held on January 22nd, 2015. Are there any questions or comments?
So moved.
Hearing none, can I have a motion? By Director Durante, seconded by Director Frica.
How about a roll call?
Yes, Secretary, please call roll.
Director Durante?
Aye.
Director Frega? Director Hobson?
Aye.
Director Ross? Director Totten? Director Fuentes?
Aye.
6 ayes and 1 absent.
Next is an ordinance amending the RTA procurement rules and regulations. Allison? I guess not Allison. Okay.
For a moment.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Today, we're seeking approval of the amended procurement rules and regulations. The majority of the changes to the procurement rules are a result of a recent amendment to the RTA Act that allows purchases under $40,000 to follow an informal competitive procurement process. James Kozicki, our Manager of Procurement and Contracting, is here to explain the changes in further detail. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellison. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is James Kozicki, and I'm the Manager of Procurement and Contracting. As Ellison mentioned, we are requesting that the regulations be amended to reflect the current value of the statute regarding the formal and informal competitive bidding process. Today, it's currently set at $10,000, and we're requesting that that threshold be increased to the statutory limit of $40,000. Just to clarify the difference between a formal and informal procurement, the formal process is, I think what most people are familiar with, a request for proposal or an RFP, the competitive negotiated procurement, or your invitation for bids, your IFBs, your low bid contracts. The informal procurements aren't as well structured or as detailed, rather, as the RFP or the IFBs, but we do still see competition for those contracts as well. So as we began working through the regulations, we noticed that we hadn't actually updated them since 2013 and wanted to make a few other changes and take the opportunity now to ensure that all those changes are reflected in what's proposed before you today. So the changes can really be grouped into 4 categories, but before I get into that, I just want to take a quick second to make the point that although we are requesting some changes, there's a good portion of what we have today that we're asking remain the same. Specifically, our DBE programs are going to stay in place. We have our veteran-owned business outreach that we're going to keep in place. And just to hit on that, for all of our procurements, for all of our formal procurements, we work with our DBE officer to identify DBEs that would be capable or potentially interested in doing the work. We include them in our solicitation outreach. As far as the veteran-owned businesses, we are using the state's list. I believe there's 113 businesses the state currently has certified as veteran-owned, and we do outreach to all 113 of them, almost all of them, rather. So with that, I'd like to get into the 4 different sort of groupings or categories of changes that we're requesting today. So the first is terminology. As we were working through the current version of the regulations, we noticed that there are a number of things that are mentioned but not specifically defined. For instance, a joint procurement. The RTA is authorized to enter into or work through a joint procurement process. Joint procurement being the RTA works with the service boards or other regions of government to try to leverage our buying power. Piggybacking, where the RTA would utilize an existing contract that another state agency has in place. Those are things that we were authorized to do, but were not very well defined. Additionally, we wanted to clarify a couple other items, specifically regarding the conflicts. So we defined situations such as an unfair competitive advantage or an organizational conflict of interest. Those are, again, things that are mentioned in the current version of the regs, but are not very well defined. So we've defined them. They are prohibited today, and we want to make sure that they are still prohibited going forward. We also want to make sure that we're reflecting organizational changes within the RTA. In the past, deputy executive directors were the only position that reported directly to the executive director, and they had a certain approval threshold for their contracts. There's a new category, directors, that are also direct reports to the executive director. We're just including those in our regulations. And then finally, we want to just put some structure around some of the items that we have in here. Again, specifically pertaining to piggybacking contracts. So we've defined it and put some structure around how the RTA can go ahead and use that contracting method. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions or provide any other information that you may need.
Director Lewis?
Thank you. In section 6.1, professional service organizations seem to be highlighted as not being subject to the competitive bid process. Is there reasoning behind that? In terms of law firms, attorneys, professional services, it seems like those are excluded from the process. Is there some reason behind that?
Yes, to clarify, in section 6.1, there is a list of the items that we do not require competitive bidding for. That doesn't mean that we don't bid those contracts out. Specifically, the law firms, that type of work, it can be bid out, but we don't, we're asking that it's not always required to be bid out. I want to draw a distinction between that and other professional service contracts. I think that we tried to be very clear about the situations where we would take something and put it into that category of not requiring competitive bidding. The legal contracts are somewhat on their own, but there are other categories of professional service that aren't in there, such as hiring an actuary, hiring a consultant, things like that. That type of work would still be subject to the competitive bidding process.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Yes.
Director Hobson?
Yeah, the move to a $40,000 threshold over a $10,000 threshold is really aimed at saving time. Do we have any idea of what kind of time or manpower we would save as a result of this move?
Yes, so the formal competitive process that we have in place, when we work with our using departments, IT, finance, et cetera, we set the guidelines of 2 to 3 months from the time they request a contract, a low bid contract, to the time that we have that contract signed, and between 4 to 6 months for the RFP competitive negotiated process. And when we go ahead and set that bar a little bit higher, from the 10K to the 40K, we can cut the time down to about a month, probably at the longest. So
I guess I was getting at how many contracts or how many negotiations would you save? What's the quantity that you would save by moving from 10,000 to 40,000?
among all of our active contracts, not just those that we executed last year, but those that we executed within the past few years, I believe there were 60 total contracts that would have been impacted by this.
And how many man hours or persons hours are involved in executing one of those contracts of the 60 that you're saving?
You know, it's hard to really quantify that. It depends on the scale of complexity regarding what it is that we're looking to buy, the good of the service that we're looking to buy. But on average, I can say that the total processing time would probably come down by about 2/3. As far as the exact hours, I can get back to you with that.
Okay, yeah, I'm thinking if you have 60 contracts and it normally takes, staff 10 hours per contract, we're saving 600 hours a year in terms of processing costs as a result of that. Yeah, I would like to know what the savings are anticipated, because that's really, is there any other driving reason other than saving staff time to do that?
It also brings us into compliance with the state statute that governs us.
But there's no, we would still be in compliance if we were still doing it at 10,000, yes?
True, yes.
Director Durrani?
When was the last time that the procurement levels were raised? Anybody have any idea if they were raised at all?
As far as I know, the 10,000 has been in effect for quite some time.
Since the beginning.
I can't give you an answer on that. I'm not too sure. I'm sorry. We can look into that and get back to you if you'd like.
I think it's been more than 10 years, but at least more than
I-
10 years, but we could dig if you wanted just to find out.
Yeah, that would be interesting, and to see what percentage increase there was the last time.
Director Clausen?
It's my understanding that the RTA also has some ethics rules which would apply to procurement and the integrity of the bid process. Is that correct?
That's correct, Director. We actually have our ethics rules, and the ethics rules are in place, but we also have certain policies in place specific to procurement.
And this proposed resolution does not trump the existing ethics rules, does it?
Not at all. If anything, we're trying to make it more clear and strengthen what we have in place.
All right, thank you.
Director DeWitt?
Chairman, thank you. Does this change roll down to the service boards as well, or is this strictly RTA business?
We're asking, excuse me, we're asking for a change to our existing regulations, but as I understand it, the state modified the threshold for all the service boards. And to date, Metro and Pace have both increased their levels, and I believe CTA's still has that under review.
To the $40,000
Yes.
level? Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, can I have a motion and second to approve? Approved and second. Is there a leave for
I'm sorry, who
unanimous?
seconded?
Director Ross.
Thank you.
Is there a leave for last unanimous roll call vote?
Leave.
Leave? No? Okay. Secretary, please call roll.
Director Durante?
Aye.
Director Frega? Director Hobson? No. Director Ross?
Yes.
Director Totten? Director Fuentes?
Aye.
5 ayes, 1 nay, and 1 absent.
Thank you. If there's no more further business to come before the public session of the Planning and Administrative Committee, I entertain a motion and second to adjourn. Director Frega and Director Durante. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.
Jerry, are we ready? 5 seconds.
Actually, while we're waiting for, we probably should clarify while we're actually in this little pause. So as many of the board members know that we have been streaming our board meetings live, audio, and this month we are actually testing the streaming of all the materials that you're seeing projected also live via the web. So I think that's the reason for this slight delay, is to help stuff catch up to just where we're at, so it's posting and people who are watching us can see it live.
Sounds good.
That's my tap dancing between acts.
Well, they're also, by their streaming, they want to put breaks in so that we can distinguish between one committee and the next, and there seems to be a small little glitch that we're fixed right now, Arnold, right?
Plus the immense amount of interest into the audit committee findings as opposed to planning and finance.
We're making sure we build up that anticipation.
All set?
Right, so let's, we're already behind schedule, so I think we should just keep moving.
All right, we'll call the